All right, we're about to start. Is anybody else coming? Think we're good? Think everyone here? All right. So what we do at DevLeague is we host workshops. We don't have that many talks. We like to build stuff. It's just like itching to build things, right? So this presentation is a interactive workshop. If you have a laptop and you want to follow along, we actually have like 4 DevLeague instructors here who could come around and help you out. And the reason why is because if we're doing a hackathon, right, and you need to access some data or build something, one of the first pitfalls is if you don't have access to the data that you need, that could, block you for a whole month, and then you end up finishing your hackathon with a slideshow, with a PowerPoint presentation. That's not really that powerful. We like to make things that work, interactive, useful, meaningful, right? So our goal here today is to, if you have a data requirement for your app or for your hackathon project, then we want you to get something working so that you can modify that and then hit the ground running today, tomorrow, right? Cool, are you guys with me? Can you guys hear me in the back? All right, well, so yeah, if I don't see a lot of people following along, that's okay. I'll kind of just jam through so you can see how it looks. And if I go through any problems, then you'll probably run into the same issues. And then take notes at least, or definitely ask me questions. My presentation is not long. Again, a lot of it is supposed to be reserved for interactive, like, oh, my thing isn't working, I need help. And then instructors will come around and then unblock you, basically get you over your current hurdles. All right, so let me talk about what APIs and go through this entire presentation. What time is it? It is 3:27. All right, how long do I have? Hour?
We'll give you until about 4:20.
4:20. Yeah. That's perfect. We'll get a lot done by 4:20. And again, at the end of the presentation is your opportunity to be like, hey, I want to use this data for example or for real life. Can you help me do that? And we're not going to take up the whole time. You could go, during this hour, you get access to DevLeague. So yay, mini DevLeague. From now until 4:20, we'll utilize these resources. We have instructors, like I said. Okay, so hack the planet. That's cool that this hackathon is called HACC. I love it. Intro to API consumption. So first of all, who are we? A lot of people here wearing DevLeague shirts. I'm not. So yeah, we're DevLeague. What we do is we build apps. Cool, web apps. And we build web app developers. And we go out to the community to work with other people like you guys to get better at doing 1 and 2. So we learn from you and you learn from us. It's how we get better. Quick part of that is we have a talk coming up where we'll be talking about web performance optimization on Wednesday. So if you are around, this is not part of APIs. This is just a shameless plug for more knowledge for you guys. So Wednesday at Manoa Innovation Center, 6 o'clock. If you make it, come. It'll be posted everywhere like Meetup and hnl.io. You'll see news of it. Okay, what this workshop is, it's not a talk again, it's an interactive workshop. Our goal is to get a proof of concept working to connect to an API. Traditionally, I do a lot of hackathons, and a lot of times they're 48 hours long, and we don't have that much time to fiddle around and get stuck, right? So getting a working proof of concept gives us a base to come back to, something that works. So that's our goal today, is to give you that, so at least you could start building without much problems. An API is an application programming interface. What does that mean? It's essentially a contract between the application you're writing and another data source, maybe a remote data source like open data from the government. Okay? So it's a contract. It's like, if you request data in this way, I'll give you the data that you want if you speak the right language, right? So generally, that's what an application programming interface. In this context, we're talking about a remote data source, okay? So today we're going to access some data from an API, and how we'll do that is we'll write code to create requests to get the data, and then hopefully we could do something meaningful with the data. the most basic thing you can do with it is display it. So that's probably what we'll do today. I love Jason just eat like popcorn. All right, so who is this workshop for? So this workshop is for if you're learning to be a web application developer, like a lot of DevLeague students right now, then this is definitely for you. Or if you aren't learning yet and you want to start learning, then definitely this is for you to get your foot in the door and start to build stuff, right? Some key things to remember throughout the month, because it could be a little bit stressful. It's just a reminder. I know you guys already do this. Just be patient, be nice, get on a team, and get some mentorship from people who have already walked the steps that you want to walk down, right? And I think we have a Slack for HACC. Does everybody? Yeah, you guys have Slack, so that's what I'm talking about. Be nice and be patient. Ask on the Slack. Ask your team for mentorship, because there's a lot of information, a lot of things to learn. It's gonna be a great month for you. If you are a web application developer, then maybe you're here to support. Yeah, new legends here. Yeah, that's you guys. All right, so how we'll access an API? How do we access a remote data source? HTTP. So HTTP is the protocol of the internet. Hypertext transfer protocol, doesn't matter. Basically, this is what this talk is about. Creating HTTP requests to get HTTP responses, and you get your rich data. So in a traditional, or in a basic client-side application, so client-side, that looks like a laptop. So from your browser, you can access a remote API, that is, get some data, and then with that properly formatted request, you could get a response back straight back to your browser or to your user's browser and do something with that data, right? So this is a valid application architecture. Browser to API, browser renders, everyone's happy, okay? Then you can build everything on the client side. This is a client-side application. There's another way you can do this, which is a server-side application. It's like if you favor Python, .NET, Ruby, any server-side language to do some like really intense business logic. Maybe you want to do some analysis on some of the data you get from open data. Maybe you access your own database to cache some results of crunching numbers. Maybe you have some proprietary data of your own that you want to tie into a remote API. Right? So let me go back one. Green, if you can see the colors, green is a request. After a request, you get a response or an error. Right? It's the same thing. You could request data from your database or put data into your database and then get a response, or to a remote API. Make sense so far? Server-side architecture. And you're not limited to like 1 or 2 data sets. You can like access multiple APIs and make something more meaningful, create a story that maybe wouldn't be told by just raw data. Cool. And then we have a client-server application. Maybe your data requirements are that you have business logic running on your server, and then you access data from your own database, and then use your client to present the data, maybe some interaction like a map or something, right? So then you're building on the client, you're building on the server, you manage your data, and maybe you access an API as well, right? So this is a very common way we access APIs, especially when the data source is, you need a, what do you call that, access token. So for example, Socrata does allow you to make certain requests, I'll talk about that later, to their API, and they will ask you for an access token. That means you logged in and you can access data and they know who you are. You're validated, right, as a consumer of their API. You would store your access tokens, the secrets for you, in your server. Then the server accesses the API, and the world doesn't have access to do naughty things with your account. That makes sense? So this is a very common pattern that we use. All right, it's only 3:35. All right, so what API do we access? Let's go data shopping. This is like the fun part. Don't skim on this. Like when you're building your application and you want to solve a problem, don't find the first data source and then like live with that, because that could make or break your application. Some we've been through 12 cohorts, and some cohorts have felt this pain point of having the wrong data or not enough data to support their application. So don't rush through this step. Like when you're shopping for data, find the best data source you can. Like call people, be like, yo, do you guys got this data source I really need, you know, of libraries or whatever? And then they might be like, yeah, it's private though, we might let you use it. So, all right, so let's go shopping. First place we'll go, data.hawaii.gov. I don't even know the parameters of this hackathon completely. Like, do we have to use this data? We don't have to. All right, so this is one place to have a lot of information. It's a government initiative to open up a lot of data for you to use, which is amazing because, like, employment, for example, let's go into here, top 50 employers. I'm probably not on here yet. All right, cool. So I'm already looking at some data. Yay. All right, so this is them accessing their own API. And you can preview and see, like, is this data that I could use for to solve my problem or to display the data visualization I want to. Physical location. It even has lat long. So if you wanted to use this data, you know you can actually use a map API like Google Maps and then show little points on it because you have latitude, longitude here. Telephone numbers. Cool, you could spam them. I don't know. Email addresses. Wow. All right, so I'm like just perusing the data source. This is what you'll be doing, and you should definitely take your time doing this again. All right, let's say that this is the data source you do want to do to kind of visualize it. Using the data.hawaii.gov site, I'll show you a little bit of how to use it. There's a button up there. It says export. See my cursor moving right there? Export. If you click that, you'll see some options. It might look confusing at first. You probably don't want to download the whole data set. Maybe you do. I don't know. You could also use their SODA API. So SODA is the Socrata Data Open Data API. You made it, didn't you? Yes. I saw your name all over that place. It's amazing. Good work, man. Good work. Yeah, I saw your stuff. So here's the API endpoint, right? And so this is where you would kind of start. This is like the location, the URL, the location of this data. Though there's other parameters that you could use to query this data. You might want to get only the first 100. You might want to get only between these years, okay? And to do that, the best way to do that really is to use the SODA API, which includes libraries and SDKs. I'll get into that in a moment. Basically, an easy interface to query the data so you don't have to do it so manually. All right, we'll play with that very soon. What else? All right, so this is kind of this part. Where you would really start is API docs and the developer portal. So you'll read this. If you wanted to use this data source, you'll read this. Read this. Maybe you'll look at some libraries and SDKs. And then when you start building or doing some examples, then this is the endpoint that you'll use to query against. We'll do that together. OK, hands-on mechanical keyboards. If you have a mechanical keyboard, if not, then sorry. So this is the interactive portion. And if you don't have, if you're not following along, that's cool. Just watch, and I won't take too long on every step. I'll like limit to a minute. So our goals right now are to set up an HTML page. Oh, by the way, we're going to make this. We're going to do this real quick. It's like fast, kind of proof of concept, right? We're going to do this. Our goals, set up an HTML page. An HTML page is kind of the launching point of your browser or client-based application. We're going to add some JavaScript to it. That's how we make it interactive and do lots of powerful things. And then we're going to pull data from an API together. And then profit, yes. Cool. And if you ever get lost or stuck during this, don't worry about it. We have the finished code that you will be writing along with me right here. So that's github.com/devleague/HACC/JS/fetch. JS dash fetch. Okay. All right, so note that. That's just one of our data sources. There you go. Take a picture. Use your phones. Cool. All right, let's set up an HTML page. I'll do it with you, and then we'll go through every step together, giving ourselves a lot of time, like a minute. So I'm going to use Vim. I don't know why. And then, so create an empty directory if you're following along for this test, right? So demo or HACC demo or whatever. And then start an index.html page. We'll do an HTML5 boilerplate. And we'll call it HACC farmers markets. Let's do farmers markets.
John, is it easy for you to transpose your colors?
Oh, I don't know. Is it hard to see?
Yeah.
Can we turn off the light? Maybe. Maybe.
Better.
Better? How is it better? Hey, look at that. Can you guys read that now?
Yeah. That's good.
It's quiet too. Yeah. All right. So this is a basic HTML5 page. So we're going to do in Hello World. One of the easiest ways to view this is just to take that index.html file that we just made and open it in Chrome. That's one way to do it. My slides here show other ways to start a local server, which is the best way to do it. If you're using Node.js, if you have that installed, and HTTP server module, you can use HTTP server. If you don't know what I just said, then ignore it. If you have a Mac, then you have Python installed, then you can spin up a simple HTTP server with this command. If you're still confused, just take a picture. Do it later. Or you can just open it up in Chrome. So since I have HTTP server, I could just say HTTP server in my terminal. And that means I can preview my work so far at localhost 8080. Right? And then that's my hello world. That means that I'm currently connected to the application I'm building, and I can continue forward. So that's previewing it in Chrome. Also, as developers or learning to be developers, always have the JavaScript console open in Chrome. So Chrome is the best tool you could use as a browser for its development tool, development environment. To do that, it's Command-Option-J on a Mac, or just go to Chrome Developer Tools and open the JavaScript console from your View Developer JavaScript console. OK. So that's what this is. So if you ever have any errors during development, this is where you'll see those errors. If you ever have any successes, this is where you can see the results that we're gonna ask for. What's next? Oh, any questions so far? You guys all have it, right? Oh, shit. All right, so let's set up a JavaScript source file. And we'll do a hello world of that and preview it in Chrome. So how does that work? In HTML, we're going to create a script tag. And go to, let's say, farmers.js. All right, so this is a new script tag at the bottom of my body tag in the HTML file. And I'm pointing to js/farmers.js. So now I need to make that file. That's a JavaScript source file in a subdirectory called JS. Okay. So I made that subdirectory called JS. And then I'm going to create farmers.js. All right. So this is how it looks. I have my index.html, and then I have a JS subdirectory, and then farmers.js. In farmers.js, let's do a simple hello world in a iffy. So this is a immediately invoking function expression just to keep our global scope tidy. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Just do this. OK. Oh, look at that. Rave. It's a rave. Console log. I know, right? It's because it's code. Code is fun. All right. Hello world. Oops. Hello world. So I created a hello world console log. Console log is a way to log out just some arbitrary data. In this case, it's a string. It says hello world in quotes. And I have this script tag. And if I save both files, make sure you save your files, then I can preview in Chrome. When I hit refresh, then you'll see a hello world down here. Ooh, JavaScript is hooked up. If you don't see that, then you got to stop and reevaluate your code. Make sure it's saved. Make sure it's in the right place. OK?
Raise your hand if you're stuck.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. We got like now 5 instructors. All right. Yeah, that's cool. OK, what's the next steps? So we have our hello world logging to our console. Great. So now it's time to get data. This is the meat of the presentation. All right, it's not very long. It's time to get data from a remote API. And it's simple. JavaScript, right? Simple, right? Real quick, who here knows JavaScript? All dev leaguers should raise your hand. Damn, that kind of messed up my day. I don't know who now doesn't know JavaScript. All right, so we're going to get data using our browser from a remote API using that endpoint, OK? To do that, it's real simple. You just have to know AJAX. You heard that word before, right? What is AJAX? It's asynchronous JavaScript and XML. You guys know about that, right? Or you could call it XHR, which is really just the XML HTTP request object, right? And then with that, you have to listen for asynchronous HTTP events. All right, ready? That's a lot, right? It's kind of a lot to go over right now. So thankfully, we're in the future. And so we could just use fetch. My key fell off. That's what happens. All right, well, I'll just do without a key. Yeah, so fetch. Fetch is a new thing where we don't have to worry about all of that. I mean, it's still happening, though we get to use an easier way to, we have to understand one thing, kind of, to get it to work, which is called fetch. It's a new API in the newest JavaScript versions, and it's here now. We could use it. So what does it look like? Let me see. I'm going to show what it looks like. Yeah, it's happening now. This is how it looks. Using fetch. So with fetch, you simply ask for a resource, and it returns a promise. So that's the only thing you kind of have to understand is it returns a promise. With that promise, you resolve that promise. Basically, it says, I promise to give you data. And then you say, OK, well, when you give me data, I'm going to do something with it. The something here is maybe displaying it on the page. Right? So just that dot then, that's resolving a promise. This fetch is the new fetch API that is documented here in MDN. MDN is Mozilla Developer Networks. It's a JavaScript documentation. OK. So you could use it now. Well, let's see. Can you use fetch? Let's see. Can I use shows that most browsers? Yeah, you can use fetch. IE 11, no. Fetch is not going to happen. Safari, no. Fetch is not going to happen. So if you don't care about them, like me, then I care about Android. Oh, look at that, iOS Safari. Maybe I cannot use fetch. This is all right. So if you really care about these browsers and you want to use fetch, then basically you'll use something called a polyfill. So it tells you here that you should use a polyfill right here. Fetch polyfill. Basically, it falls back to something that is supported, and it's still not that hard. Well, maybe. OK, we're going to use fetch today. And yeah, it's okay. All right. Obligatory, right? Let's code. Oh, Martin Luther King over there. Shoot. Today, we are going to cheat a little bit. Because I already forgot. So that's what this is for. This DevLeague repository, HACC-JS-fetch. This is for cheating.
I posted a link to that in the Slack.
Thank you very much. So in there's a farmers.js. Let me see. Should I show? Yeah, we'll cheat a little bit. Holy crap. So I wanted this to be simple. I'll go through every line of code with you on this. So here's our farmers market endpoint. I got it by going to the open data website we just saw. All right, so I made a variable for that endpoint. And I'm going to create a request. Well, let me get some query params. So what happens when you access most of the data that I showed you is available. If you ask for it without any parameters, you're going to get everything, and it takes really long. You'll get a lot of data. Farmers Markets has about 250 something, so that's not that much. In this case, this is how you limit to only getting 50 records at a time. And if I wanted to, I could start at maybe 200, right? That's how I would do that. And the way I know I could do this is it's documented at the what? Say it again? dev.socrata.com. Yeah, I was gonna go there. Socrata. Yeah, it's documented here. Thank you. Yeah, that's that guy. That's that dude. That's why the dude is here, and that's why you have stickers of him now. Is because they're awesome. Okay. So just know if you want to do something, you want to find out what are the parameters I have to add in order to do that thing. Like if I wanted to limit only to this year's data, how do I do that? So that's the questions that you'll be asking when you get to the dev.socrata.com website. Like what are these parameters I could use? So sorry, I'm not using the Soda.js API here or SDK. I'm just using raw, so I can show you how to do it raw. And then I want to create.
People who are in my session, this is a code sample that will actually work with each other. I try to do basically the same thing.
Okay. Okay, so here's a little issue here. This $sign is going to be a hurdle for you. You're going to be like probably spend some hours figuring out how to deal with this $sign. Essentially, when you encode this, when you send this as a request, this $sign turns into like a %24 character. And that's not going to work with the Open Data API. It's going to break. It's not going to do what you want. It'll actually error out. So I wrote this neat little function called query string encode. And again, that's all on this cheat sheet right here. That kind of helps keep that $sign intact so that the request will work. So one hurdle possible, save you hours, hopefully. Headaches, more importantly.
In jQuery, you can just quote that key, and it seems to work. I don't know if it'll work with that. So rather than choosing as a bare $sign.
I see, yeah.
I don't mean to make you try this right now.
Nope, I'm not gonna. Yeah. All right, so.
And then jQuery Ajax call.
Yes, that's cool. Yeah, I wanted to do it like vanilla without jQuery. Sorry. Yeah, no, it's cool. Because most people will use something like jQuery, and it'll just be easy, and you won't have to deal with these weird anomalies. Just know that this character, by default, will get encoded into %24. If that happens, you want it to be a $sign. All right, moving on. So here's the endpoint. Here are my parameters. If I wanted more parameters, I would add it here. These parameters have to really exist, though. You cannot just make it up. They have to exist, so you have to read the documentation. That's what it is to be a developer. Read a lot. So find the right places to read, like dev.socrata.com. Here is a new request. This is just a fancy way to make a URL. Yeah, so farmers market endpoint, that's this URL here. This question mark means I'm going to query with some parameters, so query params. And then we'll encode it so the browser or so Fetch can use it. And it's a proper GET request. And finally, we'll use the Fetch. So I didn't have to import any libraries or anything. Because I'm using Chrome, Fetch just exists. Cool. All right, so then I fetch this URL. This returns a promise. Then I resolve that promise. And then I get a response. With that response, well, let's. Yeah, I'll just do it. All right, so with that response, I can invoke the .json. This is part of the Fetch API. I can invoke .json to attempt to convert it to JSON format. JSON is JavaScript object notation. It's a nice way to deal with data. You know that when you see JSON, you're like, yes, you struck gold, right? So it's good. If it's not JSON formatted, then if it's just plain text, you could say .text. All of that is on the Fetch documentation on MDN. So I'm going to return this value, the response in JSON format. And then I'm going to console log it, just so we can see it. Cool? So remember, console log will throw it down into here. All right, so if it works, it'll do what I want. All right, so it looks like I got, how many? 50 objects. So the limit did work. If it didn't, I would have 250 objects or an error. All right, so this is an array of objects and some data. This is awesome. It's in my JavaScript. Now I can do stuff with it. I can do whatever I want. I can add Backbone. I can add Angular. I could add jQuery. I could just present it. I could use D3 if this had a lot of, graphable metrics. I just want to show you this. Once you see this, you've got you got the good stuff. All right. So now that we have this data coming from this endpoint, first of all, you should think in your head, this is all the codes needed, and I can use any of those endpoints that were available that we just saw. What, hundreds or thousands of them. So, and you can make multiple calls and then get all this data and then do things with it. And it's amazing. So let's actually do one thing with it, because it's only not even 4 o'clock yet. All right, so we got some data using fetch. What's next? Well, let me just check. What's next? Oh, dive in. So at this point, you could start doing something with the data that we have. You could create a goal of doing something with another data set. Maybe visualize it with D3. There are people experienced with D3 here. Maybe you want to render it with React. Maybe you want to learn React. This is a good time because there's some people who know React. Maybe you want to access a different API with Ruby or JavaScript or Python or another platform, PHP, .NET. There are people here, especially that guy, who could help you out with accessing it using the platform of your choice. So Socrata offers libraries and SDKs. Here are some of the platforms: Node.js, Java, PHP, Ruby, Scala, and Swift. Right? So for mobile, if you want to make a mobile app, they have an SDK for Android, which is written in Java, and for iOS, which is written in Swift. And they also have community-contributed platforms, or SDKs, right? So if you wanted to write your backend in code, or in Go, or .NET, or Julia, I don't know anybody who does Julia, Python, or R, if you want to do some analytical things, those exist. And that's pretty cool, because there's some people here who are ready for the next step maybe and want to learn Go. Go is actually rising in popularity. So this is a good time to play with it. And and I have some starter kits available. So if you go to this link, that's github.com/devleague, and you query for HACC, you'll see a bunch of starter kits. So we've been doing hackathons a lot, right? And one of the ways that I found to be successful in a hackathon is to not have to do a lot of the grunt work when the hackathon starts. So it's good to use a starter kit that does most of the hard work, where you can just add your business logic and make it beautiful in 48 hours. You guys have a month, so that's even better. So we have Angular 2 starter kit, which is not quite done yet. JS Fetch, which is the one we're playing with now. Node starter kit. So if you wanted to build a Node backend, then I have the starter kit here that kind of just goes through how to use Fetch to grab your data in Node.js. Yay. There's React starter kit. It's not done yet. And a Python starter kit. I didn't even start that yet. So it's there. Just stay tuned to this channel. All right, so bam. Now, let's do something with the data, because I know you're antsy, because it's like, what good is this if the users cannot see it? I'll show you how to use the HACC JS fetch right here. I'll put links in the README. What? That's really light README. And so there's a vanilla DOM branch. So there's a branch selection here. You could click on vanilla DOM and have another cheat sheet. So a little bit more code to render our farmers. So again, I'm going to copy and paste this and then show it to you line by line. So instead of console logging our data, I'm going to render the data out to the browser. right? So for that, I'm going to create a helper function. I'm going to call it farmers render to render farmers market data. So what I like to do whenever I'm developing and accessing an API, I'm probably not completely familiar with it. And even if I am, it's a good idea to document some of the things right in the code. So I'll write comments of like, what are the properties of each item in this array or in this data set? So in this data set, as we've seen here, is we have contact, farmers market, island, location 1, phone, Sunday, and time, you know? So I'll put that in my code as a reminder of like, this is the data I could use, I have access to, and this is how to spell it. I can just copy and paste it straight from my code. It's a little tip. So here's my farmers render function. It takes in the data set. I call it farmers. I'm going to access the container on my index HTML, so I need to get that container. Hold on, let me grab that. So in index HTML, I'm going to create a container for this cool new data. What did I call it? Farmers. Yeah. All right. Div ID farmers. That's my container. I'm using the DOM API or the DOM functions. Document.getElement by ID will give me a reference to that element, that div I just created, and it's I can reference it using the container variable. And then farmers here is it's an array, as we've seen. It's an array of objects. So I'm going to map over it and call each one a market. So within this map function, I could reference market as an individual object. So this one object is a market in this context. Okay? I'll create a new child div. So this is how you do it: document.createElement.div. Right? I'll add a class, farmers market, in case I want to style it later. And this is a really vanilla way to do it. No jQuery, no React yet. Right? So I'm going to create an element, H3 element for contact. I'll create an H4 for farmers market, and finally I'll show the location. And if any of those data don't exist, which does happen in this actual data set, if it doesn't exist, then I'm going to default using the OR operator to missing location. That way, it doesn't say undefined all over the page. I'll show you that in a moment. So this child that I've created as a child container, I'm going to append contact, farmers market, and location to this child. Then I'll return the child. So by doing this with a map function, the return of this is a new array of DOM elements where every DOM element is a child with market information on it. This could be applied onto our container or inserted into our container element. Fast way to do that is to iterate over it. So for each, so it's still an array, right? For each means I could have an array of things and then dot for each and do something with that number, right? Like I can console log that number. All right, so that's what for each does on a array instance. So this is an array. You could use for each. And this is a function that's called container.appendChild. So really, this is like saying container.append child and then child, or number, actually, in this case, number. All right, does that lose you? It's like a little functional pattern here. It's just pretty expressive of what we're actually doing. We're actually appending every newly created child to our container object. OK, so if that works, then we'll render. See if I have any errors. I usually do. Curse of the, oh, never mind. It works. All right, so now I'm looking at, once it's gotten the data, right, it fetched the data, then I'm rendering it in their own little DOM things. Let me just make this smaller. Right, so this is what happened: div class farmers market, H3, H4, and the p tag for the location, and missing location if it doesn't exist. Okay. Obviously, you would make yours a lot more beautiful or meaningful. Maybe this is like a directory of farmers markets, or maybe you plot these on a map, and then you can call farmers markets. or show if any farmer's market is open right now because you have access to the time, right? Whatever. You guys are creative. I just know how to build stuff sometimes. I think that's kind of it. I do want to show you one more thing of this repo is vanilla DOM. That's just everything I just showed you. Just JavaScript, no external libraries. Let me check. I don't want to just say it and not be true. OK, no external libraries. That's just JavaScript. If you wanted to check out how to do it in React, like a very simple version of React. So React is a library that does exactly what I did. It manipulates the DOM, right? It fills in exactly what I did. And just in a nicer fashion. So to look at an example of how to use React, it's not a good example. Way more better React developers than I am. So it's as simple as I can make it. Just go to the React DOM branch. And let me tour this code base real quick. So I think I could go to my HACC JS fetch. I'm in my React DOM now. So HACC JS fetch. OK, first of all, when using React, it's a library to help render DOM elements. I'm using CDN.js. Oh, God, that's hard to see. Can we? Oh, man, it's really hard to see. I'm using CDN.js, and I'll show you what that is right now. CDN.js. And there's you can search for React. Sorry, I should just do that. CDN.js is a content delivery network to host some libraries for you. So if I say React in the search, then it'll show the React library. I can see there's React.min and React min. And this is where you get those URLs, so you don't have to host it yourself. So that's where I got these from. That's React and React DOM. And then I'm using npm CDN for Babel. It's nice to use Babel for React and JSX. And then my farmers.js file, I'm using type text Babel. So it's going to go through the Babel compiler on the browser. And this is what it looks like. It does the same thing, except I define a farmer's market list. So I create a React class, and I just render a div. And for every farmer's market, I render a farmer's market component, right? So here's my farmer's market component. And all it does is show contact, farmer, farmer's market, and location info. Pretty much the same thing, just a little bit without so much document, create element, whatever. And then here's the render function, farmer's render, same thing, same function signature. Farmer's render takes a farmer's array, same data. I didn't change any of that. And then we just use React DOM render. And we render it into the farmer's container that we had earlier. That's it. I mean, I guess the most valuable thing for you maybe is are these examples on our GitHub. So again, go to devleague, github.com/devleague, search for HACC, and you'll see a list of our starter kits. Or you could build it from scratch right now, and we'll come and support you. I have 10 more minutes. Any questions? Does anybody feel like you cannot do this now? All right. Our goal is to help you be able to do this. So get from I cannot do it to I can do it. Huh? No? What's up? Yes, Bryce.
When you're actually putting it on the DOM in the vanilla DOM,
yes.
why exactly are you doing that binding?
Got it.
So is that
So the question was, for each container.appendChild.bind container, he's asking why do I have to use the bind operator or the bind function instead of just saying append child, right? Because it makes sense that for each will pass in it'll pass in the child for every element in here. it actually will break. So I'll run it right now and check out my console. Trusted console should give me an error. It says illegal invocation at this line here. Can you guys see that? So you cannot call it directly like that. I'm guessing it's because what actually happens with for each is it has a function signature of current, index, and array. And so if you invoke container append child, it probably breaks if you use append child, current, index, and array. Let's see. Oh, it actually worked. I don't know. I don't know. I do know that this will break. And to do it in one line, you have to bind to the container as the container is the context. So, yeah, this is probably messing with the context and not keeping container as this, yeah. So we tell it what this is, and this is the container. So that's why we use bind.
Okay.
Good question.
So then you're running that append child as the callback to the bind to this.
Yeah. So this bind, it returns a function, right, where container is the context. So. Yeah. Any other questions? I like these questions. It's pretty good.
That was a good question.
Yeah. All right, let's just sit in silence. No.
Such good questions.
I know.
Oh, what if you wanted to do multiple fetches? Like if you instead of just only the farmer's request, what if you wanted to
Oh,
on
yes.
APIs?
So, if you guys cannot hear what he said, this is a great question. God, I love it. He said, what if I wanted to create access more APIs? So fetch is asynchronous operation. That means when I'm fetching data here, I can immediately do this before that previous fetch is done. So then I can fetch multiple data sources at the same time. And then when they come back, I could handle that or render it or do some calculation with it. So the answer is I simply just create two fetches. Let's do employee request and employee right? Just pretend, and then do employee request. And then we render employee render here. So yeah, I could just run two fetches concurrently and then render them in different elements. And then as soon as they finish, they'll render and then render when they're ready to go. So does that answer your question? It's amazing. It's awesome. Cool. Any other questions? Would you like to share your question? Would you like to share your question? Is the question?
Yeah, my question is, as the site updates, does your content in your local machine update also?
Beautiful question. So his question was, if the site updates, like our data source, if it updates, does the results on my local machine also update? Yes. And the reason why is because I'm not accessing a cached version of this data. I'm accessing the actual data. So up to the minute, I'll get fresh new data. It could change while I'm developing, and it could change while your application has been launched. So that's the benefit of accessing the Socrata API or the government data API every time.
But per request.
Per request.
Like your page will also update.
Oh, ooh.
It's not like a WebSocket.
Oh, yeah, you'd have to create a WebSocket connection. So I could just leave this here, and then it'll update as the data updates. This API does not support sockets. So if you wanted to do that, you could create your own. You could, and this is a great exercise. All right, you could go here, on your server, create a socket connection such that your client has real-time updates with your server as your server has updates. That's possible. That'd be beautiful. Go do that. It's awesome. All right, let me show you. Well, I don't know how much have you guys seen of this site yet. This is a great starting point. You should read most all of it. It's well written. It helped me a lot to make this presentation. There's a lot of things you can do by using the Socrata API or SDKs or libraries. And I do want to show you that you do have to create an access token. So I did that. You get an access token. I'm not going to show you how to do that, though. API docs, access token.
Sorry, application.
It's
It's not an access token, it's just an application.
Application, okay. That's cool. Application token to,
It is, so the application tokens don't actually pass any authentication.
Oh,
You don't
cool.
actually have to, like, you can put them in your JS app
yeah.
without fearing that there's something that gets leaked. The worst that will happen is somebody else can use your drop.
So if you don't use a token, like I've been doing, then
You will eventually get blocked.
do you know what the limit is?
Once you piss off our security team.
Oh. Yeah. That's important. Because actually, yeah, just get a token. It's real simple.
What it does is it lets us know who you are when you're making requests. So if you do go viral or something like that, we can contact you instead of just cutting you.
Yeah, so it's really simple to get an access token. There's links on here to get one. Where is it? You register your application.
There's a big fat button on the
On the where?
Oh, when you go to like the docs for a particular API, there's a big button.
Yeah, like here? Oh yeah, there's a big button right here. Sign up for an app token. So you do that, you log in, or create an account and then log in, and then you can manage your applications, create one. Hey, let me in. Wait. Then you go to app tokens, create a new application, and give it a name, description, and then it'll give you this app token here. This is being recorded. Don't use my app token. I'm going to hide it.
There's also, you can also do you get an access token to authenticate as someone. That one is secret, but you only need that if you're going to write data or if the data is private. So most of the people here should only ever need an application token. There's no need to OAuth for most applications.
Is it possible to create a new data set on that server and then write to that?
Not on like the Hawaii.gov website. There are things like opendata.socrata.com. It's basically our equivalent of YouTube. Anybody can go there and create data sets. So if you want to create a data set there, you can.
Okay.
And you can write to it and you can authenticate and all this.
So opendata.socrata.com, write that down. If you plan to, let's say, track some new data of homeless people, then maybe you could use this endpoint to write to, and then everybody has access to it, and you don't have to manage your own infrastructure. That's pretty cool. Does that make sense to people? It's a lot of opportunity. That's awesome. I didn't know about that. That's great. Thank you. And it's 419. Any other questions?
What about what he was saying if your application goes viral? Is there some way to control
Yeah, so if you,
data you access not to get in trouble?
yes, if you sign up for an access token, then they'll track you, and then if they will know who you are, and then they can communicate with you that like, oh, okay, it's legit traffic, and then they'll just allocate more requests for you.
So what that basically allows me to do is like if we see a ton of traffic coming from your app, I can like send you an email and kind of help you optimize it, make sure that we know what's going on, things like that.
Yeah.
We very like if an application is coming in without an app token, and you see a ton of requests using an IP address. A lot of times that's something malicious, so that
Yeah.
can be shut down. But if you have an app token, it's kind of like it's like a name badge. It tells us who you are and gives you the
Yeah. So you can.
There to protect our. We have because we're a cloud service. You know, it's if you flood data.hawaii.gov with requests, you can actually take down, data.medicare, data.cms, the rest.
Yeah.
Never really happens, but
Bryce.
Where do we stick in that app token or the API token in the Jira?
Right in the headers
Okay.
as app token header. Yeah, just add it to the headers. So in the fetch API also there's options.
Parameter, right?
you can also put it in a you can put it in an app token parameter as well. For JS, that's handy.
Yeah,
For languages where it's harder to put things in the header, you can put it in the thing.
I see. We like putting things in the header though.
It's better to put in the header.
Yeah. So just look up in the fetch API what are the options. There's a headers option. Just add this header and put your app token in it.
Like the my unit or whatever, right? What's their option?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much for hanging in there. All right. Let's go to lunch.
Yeah.